A very good afternoon to one and all present here. Am I audible? Delegates, am I audible? Delegates, teachers?
Yes, you're audible.
All right. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. I'm Sobia from Delhi Public School. I'm here to orient you all on the MUN conference happening on the 26th and 27th of August, hosted by DPS. I'd like to welcome all the teachers and principals attending the meet. A very good afternoon to all of you moms, sirs. So today we'll be having an orientation to present the rules of procedures of how a MUN works. First, we have the code of conduct. All delegates are expected to be punctual to the committee sessions at all times. Delegates are expected to be coordinated and organized throughout the duration of the conference. All delegates are expected to adhere the rules of procedure and be diplomatic during committee sessions. Here we will be excluding AIPPM and CCC committee, considering the fact that both of these are informal committees and we will not be able to have diplomatic relationships. All delegates are required to wear their pauses at all times and need to produce the same when asked so. Delegates must practice mutual respect and not violate school policies. Discipline and decorum are the prime importance at DPS Mysore. The judgment and rulings of the executive board regarding committee decisions and awards will be final and binding. It is of utmost importance to maintain the facilities of the school as provided, and many misuse and damage to school property will invite serious disciplinary action. Digital policy. Digital policy is for the students attending the MUN, as we will be allowed to bring devices, electronic gadgets during the committee session. However, internet usage is not allowed. Only during unmoderated caucuses and break times you are allowed to use Wi-Fi. And must be arranged for by the delegates themselves. Delegates must maintain basic online etiquette and not indulge in distractive and destructive applications. If caught, warnings and gags will lead to expulsion from the committee. Failure to adhere to the policies will lead to disciplinary action as per the discretion of the management. All delegates must see to it that their electronic devices are fully charged. Delegates who wish to use flash drives are required to carry the same. All electronic devices must be on silent mode at all times. Delegates, we have provided different resources like communication channels, that is WhatsApp groups for individual committees. We request all of you to join the same. There are links provided on the website as well as to your mails. It'll be sent to your principals, your teachers. Please make sure you get the links and join to your respective committees. Background guides are uploaded on the website and are sent to everyone's mail. Please make sure you go through them and understand the functioning of your committee. We will have committee-specific orientations after this orientation is over. Moving on, we have dress code. Please appear, please show yourselves in business formals only. For boys, formal shirts, ties, formal shirts and ties are compulsory. You're allowed to wear blazers, suits, etc. Girls, it should be Western formal attire. Besides, sleeveless attire and casual wear will not be entertained. Also, for the delegates attending the AIPPM meet, you will have to come in Indian formals, that is traditional wear. Example, if your allotment is Manmohan Singh, you will have to dress up as Manmohan Singh, preferably the turban. In case you are given the allotment of the opposite gender, you are free to come in formals like kurtis, or if you're a guy, you can come in a kurta, a sherwani, anything else. Example, this is your example. If you're given Manmohan Singh, please show up in the actual attire of the MP you've been given. CCC students do not have to come in traditional wear. You are allowed to come in formals only, business formals. Warnings and gags. Throughout the meeting, only with the recognition of chair, you are allowed to speak. Unless and until the chair recognizes you, please do not speak. Warnings will be given the first time Second time, you'll be gagged for a few minutes. Third time, you'll be gagged again. Fourth time shall lead you to the expulsion from the meeting. Allotments. We have country allotments and portfolio allotments. Allotments are given to countries and portfolios. Country allotments are for the DISEC and the UNHRC committees. Portfolios are for the CCC and AIPPM committees. Countries are designated countries and portfolios are the personas and people adopted by the committees. Please make sure to go through the background guides to understand further on how to research for a portfolio. An observer. An observer is a regular member of committee, but they do not have the right to vote on substantive votes. We'll move on. We'll explain what substantive vote is further, but you get to talk in moderated caucuses, unmoderated caucuses. You get to participate in formal debate. You get to do everything beside substantive voting. The ROP being followed for the MUN conference, the DM-MUN 2022 this year, is the USA-UNA ROP. ROP stands for Rules of Procedure. We will be sharing the same on the website and will be sending it throughout the mail to every delegate. General guidelines. Usage of third person. Delegates participating in the DISEC and UNHRC committees are only allowed to use third person. Example, the delegate of China would like to raise a motion to speak on certain topic, etc., etc. Depends on what allotment you've received and according to which you will have to insert your country's name. Examples will be given further down, so please make sure to note them. Placards. Placards are a major role when it comes to offline MUN, as you'll only be recognized when you're going to speak when you raise a placard and speak. Example, you'll be given a placard which is like this. Your country allotment will be given here. You raise it to get recognized and you speak. Only when the chair says your name, only on the recognition from the chair, you are allowed to speak. After your name is being called out by the chair, please talk. Unless and until the chair recognizes you, do not speak, or you will be warned and gagged. And upon multiple gags, you will be expelled from the meeting. Researching beyond the background guide. The background guides are provided just as boosters to your research. Please look further into your committees and try to find out what your agenda is about and how your country interacts with it, how your portfolio interacts with it, and try to find out more about it. A quorum. A quorum is a minimum number of delegates required to begin a meeting. It is usually 1/3 of a meeting. For example, the DISEC committee has 60 delegates, and to begin the DISEC, we need about 20. That is 1/3 of 60. Moving on, presenting quorum. Presenting quorum is the number of sponsors and signatures required for the introduction of a draft resolution. We will be briefing you up on draft resolutions and signatories and sponsors later on. Please be very attentive throughout. Agenda is a full list of topics and a general by the committee being explained. We cannot alter the agenda and there should be a motion passed to adapt to the agenda at the beginning of a committee. Committee procedures. This is the USA-UNA procedure being followed throughout all the 4 committees. We have some committee-specific rules for different committees, but these committee procedures will be used for the UNHRC and the DISEC committee. Please make sure you go through these correctly. We will be sharing a Word file with you for your doubts and clarifications. You can go through it later. It will be uploaded on the website as well. Roll call. Roll call is the process of reading the member country names or the portfolio names to indicate which are present and are part of the quorum. This usually happens at the start of the committee and is passed automatically by the EB when a motion is raised for a roll call. Please raise your placards when wanting to raise a motion only when a chair or an EB member asks for motions on the floor. An EB member goes, are there any motions on the floor? And you can raise a motion for a roll call and it automatically gets passed. You can answer with either present or present in voting. When a delegate answers with present, it means that their presence is in the committee, but they will not be taking part in substantive votings, that is for treaties and for resolutions. They can abstain their vote in it. They can say yes or no. When voting for present and voting, you will only be allowed to vote yes or no for substantive votings. Please make sure you take part in procedural and substantive voting throughout. Moving on, we have voting processes. We have a substantive voting, we have a procedural voting, and we have a voting by roll call. Substantive voting is votes that have potential for action outside the debate, such as a vote on a draft resolution, amendments, and motions that modify the resolution content. Only member delegates are allowed to vote on substantive votes. Observers are not allowed to vote here, and delegates who've chosen present in their roll call will only be allowed to take abstain. Others are either going to vote yes or no. Moving on to procedural voting, any vote concurring the committee's workflow, such as a vote to extend speaker time or suspend debate, can be used here. Any vote that is not substantive vote is considered as a procedural vote. Observers may vote on procedural votes as well. Only observers are not allowed to vote for substantive votes. Okay. Abstaining is not allowed in procedural voting. This procedural voting occurs for motions like passing a moderated caucus, an unmoderated caucus, formal debate, etc. Vote by roll call. Procedure of voting in which members are summoned to vote one by one. It can be either alphabetic or it can be according to the number of people present. Please make sure you order only when your name is called out, or the delegate or the country or your portfolio is being called out. It can only be used in substantive votes. Moving on, we have the general speakers list. It is basically an overall general stance on the agenda. It is a speech. Depending on the motion, we can change it from 60 seconds to 90 seconds to 120 seconds. Let's say a delegate passes a motion stating the delegate of Argentina would like to pass a motion to begin GSL for the GSL for a time period of 10 minutes, individual speaker time 60 seconds. Please make note of the procedure in which we'll be using sentences. There is a strict way in which you'll be allowed to speak. Please make sure you note them as we present them in the PPT. Thank you. Overall general stance on the agenda. You will basically be presenting your country's or your portfolio's general stance on the agenda. The time allotment will be different according to each committee, but following the USA UNA procedure, it is generally 90 seconds and happens most of the time at the beginning of a committee. If a delegate is unable to complete the time they chose to yield, if in case you are able to finish before 90 seconds, you can yield your time. Yielding time is nothing but giving your time up. You can give it up to a chair, that is just giving up the remaining time. You can give it up to questions, which allows delegates to ask you questions. Only if sufficient time is left, we will allow questions. Comments enables other delegates to comment on the GSL speech you presented and another delegate. Now, for example, we have a delegate of Argentina and a delegate of China. Delegate of China is able to finish their speech in 60 seconds, and they can allow the remaining 30 seconds to the delegate of Argentina. Motions. Motions are anything that a delegate wishes to enact or discuss in a committee. They can be moderated caucuses, they can be unmod caucus, they can be anything. A motion is passed by a method of simple voting, that is 50% plus 1. So the 50%, the total strength is 50% plus 1. That is, let's take example, dissect has 60 members. 30 plus 1, 31 will be required to vote on a motion. A delegate can raise a motion after a chair has recognized them. Please make sure that the chair recognizes you and then only raise motions. A chair, the EB will announce stating that they will be looking forward to having motions on the floor, and then please raise your motions by raising your placard. Only when a EB member recognizes you, raise your motion. Thank you. Moving on, we have different debates. One is a formal debate, the other is an informal debate. Formal debate is a form of debate in which there's an order of speakers, each delivery, each delivering a speech in front of the whole committee. A formal debate will have a speakers list. A speakers list will determine the order in which everyone speaks after being recognized by the EB. Moving on to informal debate. Informal debate is any debate conducted out of formal debate. It does not have to be a predetermined order or does have a speakers list. Moderated caucuses and unmoderated caucuses fall under informal debates. Moderated caucuses are a form of informal debate that is moderated by the chair and allows people to speak on certain topics raised in the motion. It is having a limited amount of speakers. It is also recognized. It is also members are given the floor only after recognition. So please make sure you get recognized once again. Only the speaker who raises the motion has either to go first or last. Other delegates will have to follow the speech list order in which you'll be recognized by the chair. I'll repeat what a moderated caucus is. It is basically a form of informal debate moderated by the chair with limited speaker time. Members are given the floor after being recognized. Only one speaker is allowed to speak at a time. Observers can also participate in moderated caucuses, though the committee can choose whether an observer can speak or not. Moving on, another important note. The delegate who raises the moderated caucus has to either speak in the first or in the last. Unmoderated caucuses. They're a form of informal debate that allows people to present in the committee. Here, both delegates and observers are allowed to move freely and speak directly with one another. The EB will be present and will be observing you, but will not interact with the members. Please make sure that you can, here and an unmoderated caucus, you're free to use your Wi-Fi. You can do your research depending on what, you don't have to, raise a motion for a topic. When it comes to an unmoderated caucus, you're allowed to, just raise it for maybe committee proceedings, for working papers, for resolutions, for anything. We'll be briefing you up on more stuff later. Moving on. This is the format. Please note this down. This is the format for DISEC members and for UNHRC members. For the delegates of AIPPM and for the delegates of CCC, we will be using the same format. Beside the fact that we'll be taking in the delegate of DASH, we will say, I, Ranil Vikramasinghe, would like to suspend formal debate session and raise a motion to start a moderated caucus titled dash for dash minutes, individual speaker time dash seconds. This is customizable and the person raising the motion can say this. Same thing goes for AIPPM. Please take I and your portfolio name. Example, I, Manmohan Singh, would like to suspend formal debate session and raise an unmoderated and break into an unmoderated caucus for a time period of dash minutes to draft whatever you're going to draft. It can be working papers, it can be the committee proceedings, or it can be resolutions. Points. 1 second. We have 4 points that can be raised throughout the meeting. Point of personal privilege is a request by a delegate regarding matters that affect them personally and them alone. It should be for you and you only. For example, they need to use the restroom and maybe not being able to, hear the speaker. You can raise your placard, and when the chair recognizes you and asks to what point you raise delegate, please inform to what point you'll be raising. For example, point of personal privilege, and state only after chair says yes, go ahead. Please answer to what point you'll be raising it to and say that this is my inconvenience. Can you please help me out? You're heading to the washroom, the volunteers will be accompanying you, will take you to the place, it'll be all right. Moving on. It can be a custom request as well. Maybe if you're not able to hear a speaker, you can ask them to speak loudly through a point of personal privilege. This is the only point which can disturb committee. You can use a PO, personal privilege, POPP, basically point of personal privilege throughout anyone's speech. You can disturb anyone. This is the only point which can be raised in between speeches. Make sure you do not, misuse this point. Moving on, point of parliamentary inquiry. This is a request by a delegate to the chair for an explanation or clarification regarding the rules of procedure. This shall not interrupt another speaker. Only after a speaker is done, you shall raise to these points. That is points of parliamentary inquiry. These are direct questions to the EB. Please make sure you can ask them through chits. We'll justify what chits are pretty soon. Moving on, points of order. It is a point raised by a delegate in which you will be pointing out in factual inaccuracies or logical fallacies in another delegate's speech. For example, China says we do not have a one-party system. When we clearly know that China is a one-party system, this is a logical fallacy, and you can point this out by raising a point of order. After a delegate speech is done, you can raise your placard, and after chair says to what point you rise to delegate, please answer to point of order and then point out the point of order in the other delegate's speech. That is how it works. Moving on to point of information. This is to gain elaboration and explanation directly from the delegate from their speech. Most of the committees will not be permitting this. Please clarify this with your EBs after you'll be split into breakout rooms for committee specific orientations. It is a point to which delegates rise to another delegate's speech to ask elaborations, explanations of a particular sentence they've used. Right to reply. It is a very necessary etiquette to which you'll have to use throughout the meeting. Whenever a delegate feels their personal or national integrity has been called into question by another delegate's comments, speech, they may request a right to reply. Only with the approval of the EB, you will be able to answer. Only when EB approves of your right to reply, please answer, or else you will not be allowed to speak. This can be used only in the general speakers list. The chair may recognize a right of reply at his or her discretion. Even if you're raising a right to reply and the chair does not recognize you, please do not start speaking. You will be gagged from the meeting and you won't be allowed to talk for the rest of the GSL. Should it be accepted? When it is accepted, delegates will be given a particular time period, a timestamp in which they will have to speak, and they do not have a right to reply again to whatever the other delegate will answer to you. For example, when the delegate of US points out that the delegate of China is stating that they're calling out, US for being, let's say, having direct contacts with Afghan. And as US, you are free to, ask for a right to reply. With the approval of chair, answer it. And now after you've given your explanation, China will answer to you with the right to reply to your right to reply. And you do not have a right to reply back to the right of reply by the chair. So basically, when you take a right to reply, the delegate who's being questioned here will also have a right to speech. Delegates, please mute yourself. And then you do not get to respond. You just have to listen and settle down. Please do not agitate the chairs by answering without asking a right to reply. Moving on. Resolutions. Resolutions is basically an official document adopted by the committee stating its position on specific topics of an agenda as well as recommendations for actions. A resolution is a final product of committee's formal debate on a topic. So we have working papers, we have draft resolutions, and we have communiques. Working papers and draft resolutions are specific to DISEC, UNHRC, and AIPPM. Communiques are specific to CCC only. Please do not get confused. I repeat, communiques are only directed to the CCC members. Moving on, we have working papers. Working papers are basically notes in which they're solution oriented. You will be taking notes of everything, wherein you will be trying to find solutions for the problems, and you'll note it down. Working papers can be converted to draft resolutions. Draft resolutions can then be converted to a resolution by vote, and then resolutions have amendments, etc. Communiques are the same as resolutions. It is a committee, it's a action throughout the committee. This will be explained further in the orientation for CCC. Moving on, we have a resolution format. Please note this down. Delegates of DISEC, UNHRC, and AIPPM, you will strictly adhere to this format and use it. First, you will be specifying your committee name, then the agenda of the committee. Sponsors are basically a member of state which expresses full support for the draft resolution or the amendment. They are often the co-authors of the draft resolution and are required to vote in favor of the resolution, as in they will vote yes for the resolution. Voting on resolution is substantive voting. And however, whenever unfriendly amendments are adopted, the chair may approve the alliteration changed, that's for the resolution, significantly, but the sponsors are required to vote on the resolution anymore. They will not be required to vote when there are more than three unfriendly amendments, and it will be trashed. The resolution will be trashed when there are more than 3 unfriendly amendments. We'll come to friendly and unfriendly amendments shortly. A sponsor of an amendment is always required to vote in favor of the amendment. Signatories are a member of state which supports to enter a discussion regarding the draft resolution or amendment, but may not support the resolution or amendment itself. So signatories are basically signing. They may say yes or may vote no, depending on what the outcome is. Signatories are not bound to vote in favor of the resolution. Amendments basically are formal text which is presented as alliterations to draft resolutions. Can be any, we'll explain this further later. First, we have preambulatory clauses, also known as preamble. It is an introductory part of the resolution's content, indicating the reasons behind the discussion and the general framework. The preamble cannot be amended. If resolutions was voted by clause and by clause, preamble is adopted automatically without vote. We will be sharing a resolution so that you understand further how a resolution is, how preambulatory clauses work. We'll be giving examples for preambulatory clauses as well. Please try to stay updated with your WhatsApp groups, join them. We've provided the links everywhere. It's a request because your chairs will be sharing all of the format once again in the groups. Moving on, we have operative clauses. They are the primary part of a resolution text. They indicate the actions taken or the actions recommended by the committee. So let's say, to stop the war in Russia, Ukraine, Russia will, agree to maybe having less arms on Ukraine. They're ready to leave Crimea. They'll agree on the annexing of Crimea and leave Crimea back to Ukraine. Anything can happen here. Amendments basically are formal text in which you'll be presenting alliterations. Alliterations are like changes to a draft resolution. Amendments can only take place in draft resolutions. Please be aware, delegates. We have friendly amendments and unfriendly amendments. Friendly amendments are basically amendments that are approved and accepted by the author of the draft papers, draft resolution. And unfriendly amendments are the ones that are rejected by the author but can be voted on by the committee. Adopting unfriendly amendments may lead to the sponsor abandoning the draft resolutions. So please be certain on what type of unfriendly amendment you'll be voting on. Again, we are done, delegates, we're done with the general orientation. We'll be splitting you up into groups of, according to your committees. Please rename yourself according to your committees so that we can move you to your breakout rooms. It is a kind request for all of you to go through the background guide and use it as a booster for your research. Do not only depend on the background guide and research beyond it. Communication channels are also provided, that is the WhatsApp links, Discord links. Make sure to join them, as the chairs will be contacting you and helping you throughout